Hey everyone, my name is Roneilla and I'll be showing you how to use Flexbox. So what is Flexbox? Flexbox layout aims to provide a more efficient way to lay out, align, and distribute space among items in a container, even when their size is unknown or dynamic. So I get a lot of questions asking when to use Flexbox instead of CSS Grid or the other way around. So my answer to that is always, it depends on what you're trying to do. So Flexbox is best for one-dimensional layout. So that's either rows or columns, and it's great for content first design. So when you don't really care in the end how things will look and you just care that everything will fit. Obviously design still matters, but this is when you're putting the actual content itself first before the actual design. And then there's CSS Grid, which is best for two-dimensional layout. So if you have both rows and columns, and if you're doing layout first design. So if you want to make things, for example, you always want two columns, doesn't matter how wide each of them are, but everything will always sit into two columns. CSS Grid is best. Personally, I use CSS Grid for layouts and Flexbox for alignment. And I design everything on a grid, usually 12 column grid. So I always use CSS Grid to create like the bare bones of my websites. And then I use Flexbox to align the items inside of the containers. So I always tend to use both in most, if not all, my websites. So before we go into the actual code portion of this, I'm just going to explain real quick about the anatomy of a Flex container. So this outer rectangle here is our Flex container, and then this this container and this container are both Flex items. So you have label 1 and label 2 here. And so on a Flex container, you have two axes. One is the main axis, one is the cross axis. The directions of this varies depending on the direction of the direction that you set using flex dash direction. And I'll go through the specific properties later, but you can use columns, row reverse, and column reverse. So depending on which direction you choose, the main axis might turn. So the default flex direction is row. So this is showing the default one. So the main axis on a default row is going from left to right, and the default cross axis is going from top to bottom. If your flex direction is a column, then this will rotate 90 degrees, and your main axis would be going top bottom, and then your cross axis will be going left to right. And along with the axis, we also have the start and end. So we have the main start and main end, as well as the cross start and cross end. So the main start is the left, or the first where the elements would start on your main axis, and the end is where they end on the main axis. So if again, if it was a row, then all my elements would start on the left side and end on the right side. If I were to, so that's using justify. And then if you use align, everything would align on the top for the start, and everything would align at the bottom for the end. So this will make a little bit more sense after we go through the properties. So I'm just going to go ahead and head to my editor and the browser. So I've already gone ahead and created 3 different Flex items in one Flex container. So you can just see right here, I have Flex container, and then I have Flex item. I have 3 different ones, and I'm just going to name them all different containers so we can access them. So we have item 1, item 2, item 3, and they also have the class of Flex item. So as you can see here, we have them all: item 1, item 2, item 3. So I've just gone ahead. There's no Flex properties I have added yet. These are just to style it so you're able to see the changes that we make. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to add display flex to the Flex container. So you're always going to be adding the display flex property to the parent property. So I just added that, and then we'll refresh. And as you can see, now you can see all of the containers. This is because we have the minimum height and minimum width here, which is being applied to the flex properties. So the earlier when I was talking about the anatomy, I talked about flex direction. So the default one is row, so you can see everything is going from left to right. So row is a parent property. So I'm just going to go to the parent of flex container and I'm going to type flex direction. And if I type column, I'll save that and refresh. And now my main axis is a column and all my items are stacked on top of one another. And they're still in order from on top to right. So 1, 2, 3. If I do, for example, column reverse, it will reverse the column and the third one will be first. So you can see right there, it's item 3, item 2, item 1. And same thing for row reverse. So this will reverse the order that they show up in. So I'm going to remove this because I want the default one of row. And I'm going to change the width back to, I'm going to change it to 400. And as you can see here, it wrapped around the whole, it's taking up the space of the whole row. So I'm just going to remove this. I'm going to hover over it. And as you can see, when we check on inspect, it's actually 363 pixels instead of the 400 that we mentioned in our flex item. So this is because it has the default property of no wrap flex wrap, so which it just resizes to fit the container. So even if we make it smaller, it never stops shrinking. And when we make it larger or wider, it stops at 400 because that's the width that we gave it. So in order to avoid resizing, like we can add we can use a property of flex wrap. So you can just type flex wrap and then add the word wrap. So now every time the child doesn't fit next to the others, it will just start a new line. So I'll keep letting it go wider. And now since everything fits, now they're all 400. I'm going to shrink it again. And each of them are still 400 and they didn't resize because we added flex wrap. So the default one here is no wrap. So if you don't declare anything for flex wrap, it will just automatically resize the items to fit the container size. So there's a shorter way to define your direction and wrap, and that is flex flow. So I can write flex flow, and I want this to be column wrap. So I'm just going to write column wrap, and I'm going to resize this, and now it's a column, and it's wrapping. So this always goes, the first word that you write is always your flex direction, then the word after is your flex wrap. Again, I want this to be a row wrap. So to move on, I'm just going to change it to row wrap, and there we go. So the next thing we're going to go over is justify content. So justify content is my favorite and probably most used flex property. It's really great when you want to align things. I use space between all the time. So I'm just going to add justify content over here. And I'm just going to add one of the properties you can use is flex start. It's not going to do anything. Flex start is the default, but everything just aligns to the beginning of your flex container. So I'm actually going to add in a height to our flex container so you can more clearly see the difference in the styles. I'm just going to add a defined height. Okay. So now everything aligns to the beginning. So you can see I make it wider, make it shorter, everything still aligns to the left side. And so we also have flex end. So I'll save this and refresh. And now everything aligns on the right side. So I make it smaller, make it bigger. Everything is always aligned to the right. And then you can also align it to the center. So now everything is aligned on the center, and you'll get space around the children instead of on a certain side. So this is one of the tricks to getting everything to align on the center. And then there's also space between. This is one of the ones I use the most because I define the actual width of the container, and then I just let everything space out evenly. This is best used for navs. So if you have 5 different nav items and you want them all to space out evenly, or yeah. So this is space between. So as you can see, they always have space between them, and the two children on the edges always touch the edge closest to them. So item 1 is always on the start, item 3 is on the end. And then there's also space around, which is going to put a margin on each side of them. And the spacing here is not always going to be visually even, but each item is going to have the same amount on each side. So item 1, let's say this is 50 pixels. So you'll have 50 here and 50 here. Item 2 will also have 50 here and 50 here. So that means that between item 1 and item 2, there's a total of 100. So this can be good to use, but usually it's not visually equal. So you can, if you still want spacing around every single one of them, including the sides, you can use space evenly, and it's going to space out. It's going to add the same spacing between everything. So if this was 50, then you only have 50 here, and 50 here. Okay, so I'm just going to remove justified content for now. And the next one is align items. So this will align items on the cross axis. So remember, justify is for the main axis, align is for the cross axis. Also, justify is the direction that you defined, and then align is for the perpendicular direction. So we have align items. I'm going to do flex start. And it's going to move everything. Again, this is the default one. So it's just going to keep everything on the top left. I will show flex end, and everything will be aligned to the bottom. So this is the cross axis. So the flex start is the top, the flex end is the bottom. So for example, if I write justify content flex end, so now they're both flex end, everything is on the bottom right. If I make the justify content flex start, but the align items flex end, on the cross axis, they're on the bottom, and then on the main axis, they're on the left side. So I'm just going to remove justify content real quick again. The next one I'll show is align items center. So now it will be centered on its own area. So as you can see, it's centered on the cross axis over there. The next one is baseline. So you won't see much change here. It just this will just align them on the baseline. So if you're using text. The next one is align content. So I'm just going to give this a justify content space between real quick. Okay. And then align content will basically just align the children as a whole instead of individually. So if I were to do align content center, for example, you see that all the children move to the center of the container. So this is different from align items, because if you do align items center, and then I'm just going to comment out align content center, they move to the center of each of their own. It's almost like their own little area. So this little box is for item 1, and it's at the center of that box. But if you do align content center, all of the items kind of gather towards the center of the entire container. So you can also do flex end, which is going to move everything to the end. There's space between. So this is still the whole, all the items as a whole is being aligned to the container. So now it's, this is space between, and we have space around. So this is similar to justify content. It's just on the perpendicular axis. And then we have space evenly. There you go. So it's the same, it's pretty much the same styling, just on a different axis. So space evenly, this is all the same spacing, top, middle, and bottom. If I do space around, so this is, for example, if this is 50 again, this is another 50, this is another 50, so the total is 100. So we're just gonna leave it, I'm just gonna delete that real quick and delete align items real quick as well. Okay, so we have space between. So the next property is child properties. So we've just gone over all the parent properties. So flex flow, justify content, all that stuff was properties for the parent. Now I'll go over properties for the children. So one of the ones that are also commonly used is order. So using this property, you can change the order that they appear in. So I'm just going to create, just going to add a style to each one. So I want to place item 1 last. So I'm going to give it 3. And this goes in chronological order. So item 2, I want to appear first. So I'm going to do order 1. And then item 3, I want to appear second. So now this should appear item 2, item 3, item 1. So 2, 3, 1. Refresh this. So as you can see, item 2, item 3, and item 1. So this is great if you want to be able to rearrange things, if you're resizing them, because it makes it a lot easier rather than having different, a lot of different divs and then having certain ones appear and disappear in certain breakpoints. That was my use case for it. I had layout in my portfolio that showed up as photo text on one row and then text photo on another row. But then when you shrink it, it goes photo text text photo because it was all one column. So I to make them responsive and show photo text once you hit the mobile breakpoints, I used the order properties. The next property is flex grow. So this property defines the ability for the item to grow. So the default is 0. So I'm just going to remove the order properties real quick and bring that back to the beginning. And if all of them have the same flex grow, they'll be resized equally. So if I gave them all flex grow 100, they'll all grow the same amount. But for example, if one child has a flex grow of 2, so let's give item 1 a flex grow of 2. And then let's give these two a flex grow 1. And then I'm just going to remove their width that I defined right here. And now you can see that flex 1 grows twice as much as flex 2 and flex 3. And if I change this to, let's give flex 3, let's do it in order. So flex 1 grows 1, item 2 grows flex 2, and item 3 grows flex 3. So now you can see that this item 1 is the smallest one because it has the smallest number of flex grow. And then there's item 2 grows twice as much as flex 1, and item 3 grows 3 times as much as flex 1 because of the flex grow numbers that we defined there. And if you wanted to realign each item, there's also the align self property. I'm just going to write align self. I'm just going to put flex end for all of them, but I'll change this. So similar to our align items, justify, and align content, you can align each child individually. So I'm not going to assign anything to item 2. And then I'm going to assign flex to line 3 to item 3. And then I'm just going to add in align items center. So the default one is center, but since I'm overriding the alignment for item 1 and item 3, those will be different. I'll just change the flex end. So the default one is center. So item 2 should be centered, item 1 should be at the end, and item 3 should be at the start. So I just refreshed it, and you can see that each item has a different alignment. So I'm just going to add a space around real quick so it's not right on the edge. So as you can see here, I aligned all the items to the center. So that's the default one, but then you can override it if you give the style to a specific class. So if I comment this out, so now I'm not aligning them separately. So I'll just save this and then refresh. Everything is aligned on the center. But once you override them, they each take on the alignment that you provide them. So that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching this workshop. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, you can send me an email. I'll be providing it in the post. And I'll also be providing a PDF with more information about Flexbox. Thank you so much.